Hey gang. So, my brain can be a very weird place. I was thinking of dyeing some roving, but I want to get very concentrated colors in stripes, and I don't want to hand paint because I just always find the dye never takes up completely and it bleeds like crazy and it's just doesn't. I want to find a different way to do it. So, I was in my dye lawn slash laundry room and I found the rack for my dryer, and I have got some roving and citric acid here. So what I'm going to do, heat the water in here. I've got citric acid in that as well. So I'll add my dyes in, and then I'll just hang portions of the roving in here to dye, and then change it, change the dye color, etc., and see what happens. This could be an epic fail. The roving might just completely disintegrate, although I don't think it will. I think it'll hold together pretty well. But I have no idea what's going to happen. Let's go on a crazy trip and do some dyeing. I'm going to get the water heated up and I will figure out some colors. I have some country classics and some Jacquards to use up. So we'll find a few of those and we'll get going on this. I honestly, I've never tried this. I don't know what's going to happen. I haven't even looked to see if anybody else dyes their fiber this way. I just had a thought, and sometimes when I have a thought, I just try it. So let's see what happens. All right, our first experiment, we're going to use Country Classics Mahogany. Looks something like this. And Pine Green. And it looks like this. Doesn't like to focus. Ooh. So I'm going to use 5 grams of mahogany, and we'll see how the color looks. I find the Country Classics are not real saturated dyes, so I usually use a lot more of these than I would have, say, Jacquard or yeah, you know, the other ones, the greener shades. Oh, brain non-functional today. Yeah, these are old dyes, so they're pretty crumbly. I'm not going to be too picky about measurements. Don't yell at me for not wearing a mask. I'm a 50-year-old smoker who lives near a nuclear plant in a pandemic. I'm sure that a little bit of acid dye powder is not my largest concern. All right, let's see how that looks. It's got a very cherry color to it, but it's still pretty light. All right, so just continue to let that warm up. While it does, I'm going to wring out a couple of braids and get them ready to go in, and get the rack across the top, lay them out, and let's see what happens. So here's our first braid. Well, it's not a braid. I have the roving loose because I want it to be able to penetrate all the way through. So I'm going to just put half of this, that's a good color, into the dye pot, and lay the other half safely out of the dye water on top of the rack. I'm going to grab a second one. And I'm going to do the same on this side. And I'm going to spread it out. So it looks like this. Oh, I'm making a shadow. Come over on my side. There we go. So it looks like this, with just a portion of the fiber in the dye pot. And we're going to let that heat for a while longer. Let that dye set and the dye bath exhaust, which hopefully it will do. Then we will add the green to the same water, flip the braids over and dye the other side and see what happens. Kind of curious if this is going to work. At worst, I'll have some multicolored fiber for spinning. At best, I'll have some gorgeous braids. So I have no idea what's going to happen. It's a mystery. So we get the water temperature up. And so far, seems to be going well. Oh, there's a little white spot down there. So we'll get that spread out. Let's see how our dye bath is doing. Oh, it's starting to exhaust. Just move the fiber around a little bit to make sure we have full coverage without agitating too much, because this is not superwash. This is just some BFL or Blueface Luster if you prefer. But I'm liking the color. I was hoping for a rusty kind of red color, and that's what the mahogany is giving me. I think with the pine green, that will look really cool. So I will let it cook a little while longer, and let's see if the dye bath exhausts. If it doesn't exhaust in another couple of minutes, I'll throw in some dye soppers just to suck up the last of that. Then we'll add the new dye, and we'll flip it around and dye the other side. Back in a bit. Okay, so I think I'm ready to pluck it out. I just have a bin, upturned bowl, and a little basket here, so that I can lift this out. Oof, she worm. And I can continue to keep my colors separate from my white. And I can also let this cool a little bit so I can handle it when I go to put the other end in. There we go. All right. We'll put this aside for the moment. Now there is a bit of dye left in there. So I'm going to just grab a chunk of roving, plop it in, push it down, use that to absorb up the last of the dye. I end up with tons of odds and ends of colors like this, and they're good for blending or just for spinning the way they are, whatever you'd like to do with them. And I have some BFL locks I'm going to throw in there too. Actually, it's BFL hand combed roving. We'll plop that in there. And this is how I get a lot of my pastel colors, is just using them as dye soppers. I mean, I could be patient and just let it sit overnight and absorb the rest of the dye, but I'm just not that patient. So we'll push that down. My temperature is getting a little high here. So we'll turn that down a little bit. Almost gone. We'll give that a minute to soak up the last of the dye. Then we'll turn it into a new dye bath and try dyeing the other side. So our dye suppers have done their job. I'm gonna fish them out. gonna get this lovely dusty rose. Sometimes the dye soppers are just as pretty as the actual fiber. Look at that dusty rose color, and it's tonal. That's pretty. All right, put that aside. Then we're going to take our pine green and shake it up really good to make sure it's all powder. We'll add that much. Oh no, I just splashed myself. I should know not to do this in anything but my roughest clothes. Sometimes I'm a dumbass. Can you see? Probably got it on my face too. I'm so coordinated, it's amazing. Alright, so we'll mix this in. Luckily it's green spots on a green shirt. Okay, that looks pretty good. So we'll get our screen on the top. Bring our fiber back. Now it's cooled just enough that I can handle it, which is perfect. I'm gonna plunk that down. Whoop. All the way down. There we go. And I'll get the other one. And we'll put it on the other side. I mean, this is literally just cool enough for me to handle. It's pretty hot still. Get this all down in there. There you go. And we'll just lower these down until they're in the green. Whoop. Where do you think you're going? There we go. Get you a look inside the pot. Just take my spoon. And we'll just tuck that under. Right up to the edge of the red. And now we're going to let that cook. You can see on this one, I didn't quite get even coloring. There's one spot, it must have been tucked in. But the rest of it has a pretty nice even color. Well, maybe not quite so even, but it looks pretty good, and it's got full penetration all the way through the fiber, which is what I was really looking for. So we'll let that cook and then bring it out, and we will try this again with some more colors. All right, let's give a look at our dye bath here. It's pretty close to exhausted. So I'm going to do something I probably shouldn't, but I'm going to do it anyways. I'm just going to dump all this red in there. Or as much as I can anyways. I got that one twisted and turned all around. Oh, there's an end. And I'm just going to dump it all in there and let it soak up the last of that green. Now, because there's only a little bit left in there, it should just kind of give it a homogeneous tinge over the entire roving, at least in theory. Again, I am absolutely experimenting. So our water temperature is at 155. I've turned the heat off. I'm going to let that sit for about 15 minutes or so. And when I come back, we'll pull it out and get it set aside to cool so that we can wash it up and see what we actually ended up with. So I will be back in a bit. Well, the dye has all absorbed and I have some pretty roving. That I'm going to just fish out of the pot while I get about 8 pounds of water on the table. This is why I have a old kitchen table and lots of towels, because I am messy. Well, I wasn't really going for Christmas, but you know, anytime you do red and green, that's what you end up with is Christmas. But I like it. So we'll let that cool and we're going to get started on our next experiment. I'm going to use the same method, but more dyes, more colors. Give myself a little more space here. Clean up some of this water. I'll clean up my mess and then we'll play with the new ones. I think I'm going to switch to my smaller pot. Give me a minute. So we switched to a smaller pot. I want to work up some more pastel type colors. So here I have some more country classics to use up. So we have, this is Nautical Blue, Avocado, Quicksilver, and Ripe Tomato. So because red can be the hardest to exhaust, I'm going to start with the Quicksilver and work my way up. I think I'll go Quicksilver, Avocado, Nautical Blue, and Ripe Tomato. The Quicksilver into the pot it goes. Put our rack across. I just got water up to my armpit because I'm just talented like that. All right, and we will start with color number 1. Color number 1. Spread it out a bit. Fished out the Quicksilver. I'm going in with the Nautical Blue. It's funny how it looks purple in the jar, but as soon as you add it to water, it is definitely blue. It's another good reason to experiment with your dyes, because what they look like in powder form can be hugely different from what they look like in a dye bath. So my first takeaway from this experiment is it's very messy. I'm getting water everywhere. But since I work in my laundry room and there is a floor drain, I'm not overly concerned about it at this moment. All right. But the one thing I'm liking about this is we're getting full penetration on the roving. It's getting all the way through. And we are definitely getting separate colors. I'm not sure how much this handling is going to felt it. We will find out when I'm done. It's so hard to tell when it's wet because it looks like it's felted, but I touch that and it doesn't feel like it. So I don't know. it might be a little compacted. We'll see. Crank the heat up again, get that going. I'll be back when the blue is exhausted. Okay, so the blue is fairly well exhausted now. We're going to go on to the avocado green. Where are my tongs? There they are. Push that out. And we grab the avocado green. I debated about whether I wanted to do this, and then I went, you know what? I'm doing it anyways. It's an experiment. Let's see what happens. Wow, avocado green is very green. Oh well. I'm doing it. All right. Get that in there. Get that in there. I'm going to save the last bit for the pink. All right. The water's cooling off again. Now I want to keep this a light green, so I'm going to throw in a dye sopper right now to absorb some of that green. And keep it a more pastel-y shade. Pastel-y. I don't think pastel-y is a word. It is now. Pastelli. It sounds like a pasta. We're going to have pastelli for supper tonight. Oh, I think the dye fumes are getting to me. An interesting thing happened with the avocado. Can you see that? It turned into like a purpley gray and green with a little bit of red in there. I'm not even sure what happened, but I kind of like it. Oops. That's one way to empty the spoon. Well, we got it in there. We'll just stir it up. Oh, I'm so coordinated. Get in there. Now that last one's going to be pretty bright. So I'm going to let that soak in. And if I have a little bit left over, I might dump the whole braid in and kind of get a tonal cast over everything. Or I might not. I haven't decided yet. We'll see. Back in a bit. All right, I'm doing it. I'm doing it. I'm doing it. I'm putting the fiber back in. I'm going to put the green in for a little bit. That pink really, that ripe tomato, really came out much darker than I thought. So I'm going to ease it into the other colorways by starting to bring them into the bath. And I'll probably go about halfway up the blue, but I don't think that I will go into the Quicksilver. We'll see. But I want to kind of blend that color out a little bit more. There's just this lovely purple color in the pot. Can you see that? It's an amazing purple color. And if I blend that into the blue, going to make such a cool shade. Now I'm thinking I want to mix the nautical blue and the ripe tomato into a roving. Guess what I'll be doing later? But for now, I'm going to mix in a little more of this blue. And a little bit more here. To volcano my fiber. Let the bubbles escape. Nope, you know what? I like this, but I also like that pink tinge over everything, so it's all going in. I went to all that work just to dump it all in the pot. Just over dyeing it, it's not going to have a whole lot of fiber or dye to take up. So it'll just give it a tinge in the over dye. I think I might have to add some water to that. Because it's a little lower than I'd like. So I'll just use some of my citric acid soak. Try not to get it on the roving so the temperature change doesn't affect it. All right. Now, because this is a red and it's going to take forever to exhaust, I have a little bit of dye stopper I'm going to toss in there too, just for fun. I'm going to get this up to temperature and then I'll just let it cool in the pot. And we will come back later and see what we end up with. I'm telling you, this is really a mad experiment. I'm also telling you later, we're coming back and we're doing that nautical blue and the ripe tomato. We're going to blend those together and go for a semi-solid colorway. All right, I couldn't resist. I could not resist. I need to mix this ripe tomato in the nautical blue, but I want to do it in smaller bits. So I'll grab my smaller spoon. So this is 1 gram. And I think I want to go 2 to 1, 2 blue, 1 red, because the pink is really, really strong. So I think I will go 2 grams of the blue. Oh, my water's not hot enough. Shoot. Well, it's in there now. And 1 gram of red. That ripe tomato is really strong. I'm going to have to add some more blue. But we'll see. Ooh, that looks horrible. So when you want to know what happens when you mix it in before your water's hot, this is what happens. Well, we'll let it heat and hope the color comes out better. If not, we'll keep tweaking it and see what happens. But this is what I love about just slapdash experiment. You never know what's going to happen because you haven't tried it before. I mean, I'm sure some dye expert could tell me, no, don't do that. It's going to turn out badly. I'm sorry, I'm terribly amused by this. All right, I'm going to let it heat up and we'll see if we get a better color when it's warm. I added another 2 grams of the nautical blue, so I'm working with 4:1. And that's what I wanted right there. That beautiful purple tone. And if it goes tonal when I dye, it will be amazing. All right. I don't know how much I have here. This is just some tail ends of roving. And I'm going to just start plopping it in. I'm just going to let it sink so it takes up the dye a little differently across the roving. If I push it down, then everything gets exposed at the same time. If I let it sink, it should get more tonal as the bottom bits get more dye and the top bits get less. But I am really, really liking that purple. I think it looks freaking amazing. So I'll make notes for the cherry tomato, what is it, ripe tomato? One of those to 4 of the nautical blue to make this purple. One more look in the dye pot. Can you see that? It is so amazing. We have like some burgundy tones over here. We've got like neon purple over here. I'm just noticing I pretty much made the color of my spoon. It's coming out very tonal and lovely. I just stumbled upon a recipe I really like, but with colors I'll probably never use again. Or never buy again, I should say. Well, I will just have to experiment with my greener shades. See if I can make a similar color. This is why note taking is important. All right, back to waiting. And there we go. I've got all my rovings washed and I spun them out in my salad spinner. Now I've got them on an old sweater dryer. I've had this thing for so many years I can't even tell you. I don't even remember. I think I bought it at Giant Tiger. This was the final roving. The purples, they didn't come out purple. They came out more dusty roses and mahogany. This is more mahogany than the mahogany was. But regardless, I'm just going to pop this top one on to keep the kitty cats off of it because Bobo likes to climb on everything. And then in this top tower part, it just has a fan. I click that on in a couple hours, that'll all be dry. It's amazing how much just getting that air movement helps. If it was summertime, I'd just take it outside, but it's not summertime, so in the winter, this is what I do. I don't even worry about having heat. I just turn on that fan, let it go, no time at all. I have dry fiber. So that's it for the drying. I will show you final photos of the dry product when it is ready. So, how did the little dyeing experiment turn out? Well, mixed results. Proof of concept, we did get complete saturation of color through the top, as you can see, which is one of my goals. So there is no white in here. The color blends are good. They come right up to each other. So there's no gap there either. That light's a little too bright. Hold on, let me lower that a bit. I did get my new shop lights, but I just haven't gotten a chance to install them yet. So we're still working with the OttLight. There we go, that's better. So you can see that the colors blended well. But, as you can tell, it did felt a little bit. I suspect that was my rough handling of the fleece. But it's not too bad. It just needs to be opened up and fluffed a bit. So that was the green and the red. So this was the tricolor one. Again, got some felting. But I do like the color blends. There is no white. It's saturated all the way through the roving. However, what should have been pink came out very red. So I'll probably end up pulling this apart and using it in different projects because it's just too bright for this braid or this length of roving. It doesn't go well. Apparently it's the one Country Classics color that gets really intense really easily. But as you can see, again, lightly felted. It did soak up the last of that, so everything has a kind of pink cast to it, which is quite lovely actually. I like the blue and the pinky purples. They go really well together, so I'll probably use them in a project. It's the red that I'm going to yank out. But you can see, proof of concept, it does work. I can get well saturated colors that butt up against each other without hand painting. Now, the downside is you do end up with water all over the place. So I'm thinking I would want to put down a cookie sheet or some other waterproof surface to work on to just catch all that water. With what I've learned from the first attempt, I will likely try this method again. And I will pick better colors. I'll be more serious about my colors. This was just, again, using up stuff I had left over. Interestingly enough, the ones I'm most pleased with were my dye soppers. We ended up with some really cool colors in this. And then my experimental, what should have been a purple bath, came out more like a dusty rose pink type color. Here's the other chunk, and you can see how it absorbed the dyes differently as I let it sink into the bath rather than just pushing it all down underneath at once. It's a good way to get variations on your shade in dyeing, is to just lower it into the water at different times. And then these were my dye soppers from the green red, and they came out in this beautiful dusty rose. Now here's an interesting thing. This is commercially prepared BFL, and you can see how it took up the colors. This is my hand combed BFL. Actually, I think I carded this. And it took the colors up a little lighter. But the prep, I love the hand process stuff. It's so fluffy and soft, and I cannot wait to spin this up. It just has like this beautiful pinky dusty rose tint through it. It's so gorgeous. I can't even tell you about it. So I'm adding this, all of this dusty rose stuff to my spinning pile to make some yarns, which I will eventually list on my Etsy shop. But for now, and I do like this little bit of green in with the purples. It's quite lovely. So that's the results of my experiment. Did it work as well as I'd hoped? Not right away. Do I think I can make it work? Absolutely. I think with taking what I've learned and adapting it a little bit, I can have a process that I'll be very happy with, and then I'll have a lot of control over where the dyes land on the roving. Please don't mind my crazy cat. He's up there now. He's got the zoomies right now because he's Bobble, and that's what he does. But thanks for coming on this adventure with me, guys. If you like these kinds of things, subscribe. I'm into all things fiber, and I will be posting videos along the way. So thanks for joining me. Bye.